overinflated, too much money thrown in, and look what happened to WeWork. So, Kelly, I think paradoxically, the WeWork debacle will probably make the IPO market healthier next year.
Sure.
We need to avoid these crazy late-stage rounds and get these companies public earlier.
And Bobby, one interesting point on that is in terms of where the money's coming from. There's a lot of corporate money here. We all know the Comcast, I think we have a venture capital arm. They do a lot of deals. How much of the money is coming from places like that? How much is, because SoftBank, obviously, I take Duncan's point, but they're not the only game in town. Where else is this money coming from?
Well, it's coming from all the usual places. It's coming from pension funds, endowments, sovereign wealth nations. It's coming from family offices. It's coming from corporates, as you said. And you do have a corporate venture arm as well as a lot of other corporations. And I think the way to look at it, and I totally agree with Duncan, that's the wrong metric to look at what's important. I look at it as a metric not really for the IPO market, because you remember, you raise the funds, you invest them, you're with companies more than 7 years in most cases, and then finally they have some sort of event like an IPO, which is just another financing round for them in the life cycle of an individual company. So you really have to think about from the VC perspective, okay, what was fundraising 7 years ago? Or the money that's being raised now is going to get deployed over a long period of time. Duncan's right. A lot of the numbers have been kind of inflated with others coming down and what some refer to as a private IPO with making the big investments, late in the game. I think what's important for the entrepreneurs and the ecosystem at large is that we continue to have funds available for them. I mean, we have seen a precipitous market share drop over the last 20 years. And other countries now have capital available. They many times have better policies in place like immigration and other issues.
So Duncan, I'll ask you then where this is going. Is it going to take us 7 years for then, in other words, if the money being put to work now was raised many years ago and has to get put to work somewhere, at what point do we see a slowdown hit? If it's going to come, if it's only just for the rationalization of those later rounds, or people say, well, maybe I don't want to participate at these price points.
Well, it acts like a train wreck in a way. The caboose is the early stage, and the IPOs are the engine. When the IPOs go off the rails, about a quarter later, the mezz rounds late stage begin to get nervous, and it ratchets down the venture funnel. Postmates being delayed is not a good sign. On the other hand, Postmates, like Peloton and like WeWork, was probably a poorly designed IPO candidate because of their unit economics and business model. I think we have to wait till the first quarter. We'll see how healthy it looks then, and if the train rights itself, the rest of the VCs will be very, very solid and comfortable, and this will be a good year next year.
We got to go, but Duncan, you promised you'd give us a hot IPO name, or actually you didn't, but now I'm going to ask you for one.
I don't have one right now, unfortunately.
We got.
Last time I said Datadog, that was pretty good, but at the moment I don't have one because the calendar seems to be pretty dry into
quiet.
Q1.
Exactly, into next year. All right, we'll see what the first quarter brings then. Thank you both, guys. Appreciate it. Duncan Davidson
Thanks, Kelly.
And Bobby Franklin. Check out shares of Roku, which are up more than 6% today. They're now on pace for their best day in more than 2 months. This after an upgrade to outperform at Macquarie that predicts its users will triple in 3 years. That analyst who made the call will join us on Power Lunch about 2:15 p.m. Eastern Time. You won't want to miss it. Coming up, some of China's most important unicorns are being blacklisted by the U.S. A look at which companies are being singled out and why. Before we go, ESG investing is growing in popularity, with assets more than doubling this year. At our Delivering Alpha conference, Afsaneh Beschloss, the founder of Rock Creek Group, argued for why a company's environmental social governance rating is a good indicator of long-term profitability.
Those rating agencies, the S&P and Fitch, will have to integrate ESG into there, and you're starting to see that. And I think the other thing is that so far, it's been about quarterly earnings. And if you move towards longer-term sustainability of a company, not just quarterly earnings, I think, obviously, you have to be investing in long-term value. You have to be investing in your staff and your team. Otherwise, you don't have a company.
For more investment ideas from the biggest names in business, visit DeliveringAlpha.com.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my Family gave me Now TV. There's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch, because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family want crime dramas, I've got loads, and they're never gonna guess who did it. Dramas, I've got all the big shows from Sky Atlantic. Or how about comedy? Coming up, way better than the dad jokes in this house. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus, month passes auto-renew, terms apply.
If you can drive a van that's built in Britain, with class-leading fuel economy on every run, to Middlesex to do some masonry, or to Tunbridge carrying well over a ton, yours is the all-new Vauxhall Vivaro, and you'll be driving a great Brit van, my son. All-new Vauxhall Vivaro carries British business. To find out more, search New Vauxhall Vivaro.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch, because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family want movies, I've got blockbusters. Football, how about the Premier League? Or how about crime dramas? I've got loads, and they're never gonna guess who did it. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus, month passes auto-renew, terms apply.
Major League Baseball postseason is in full swing, and TuneIn Premium puts you at field level for every...
And it's a home run!
...single...
And gone!
...game.
And that gone, a home run!
With TuneIn Premium, catch every pitch of every inning of every Major League postseason game until the final out of the World Series.
0-2 pitch, little half swing, and it hit...
At home or on the road, Major League Baseball's postseason action is on TuneIn Premium.
And that ball is gone!
Upgrade today.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal, every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern, only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Welcome back to the exchange markets, hanging on to their gains this afternoon. The Dow's up 177, 0.2%. The best performer is the Nasdaq, up 1% or 75 points right now. A lot of this, again, on reports about a partial trade deal. So what happens if that is the outcome this week? A partial deal, even a truce with China? For more, let's check in with Bob Bassani at the New York Stock Exchange. Bob?
And that's the problem. Is it a truce or a deal? What's the implications of that? So we're up today on more trade talk hopes. That's good news. China stocks, semiconductors, materials, industrials, all the stuff that moves on China news is up today. The good news is the expectations for these talks have been pretty low. The bad news is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of daylight to make any kind of comprehensive deal, if there's a deal at all. So reports today that Chinese may be willing to buy agricultural products, but only if there are no more tariffs. Well, this has been floating around for a while, as your guest made clear just a few minutes ago. It's not clear if this is a deal or a truce. This is a problem, because if the market perceives this is just a truce, that's a problem longer term, the next few months going into the close of the year, because a truce could be abandoned at any time. Markets don't want that. That's not going to change the central market narrative that has been developing. You've got to find some way to reverse this narrative. The narrative is growth in 2020 is going to be lower, even if there is no recession. Rates are going to be flat to low. The leadership's going to remain in defensive sectors like consumer staple stocks, and earnings guidance, and particularly for the fourth quarter, will slowly be trending lower. And Kelly, that's a big issue for the markets right now. Back to you.
All right, Bob, thanks very much. Bob Pisani. Now to Sue Herrera for a CNBC News update. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Kelly. Hello, everyone. Here's what's happening at this hour. Civilians are fleeing parts of Syria as Turkish troops begin their aerial assault in Kurdish-held northern territories. The military operation comes just 3 days after President Trump ordered U.S. troops to leave the area. The president moments ago said he thinks the incursion into Syria is a bad idea. The firm that reviewed designs for a Florida University footbridge which collapsed was not qualified to do so. That's the finding of a new NTSB report. The incident from March of 2018 killed 6 people. Losing your job or taking a pay cut may be bad for your heart. A new study found workers who experienced a 50% drop in income were at a higher risk for heart disease. And Goodyear and Airbnb are teaming up to let a select few spend the night inside the famous blimp. For $150, up to 6 people can stay inside, but no flying. It has to remain grounded. That's pretty cheap. That's the news update this hour. Kelly, back to you.
That's how you'd get me on it.
Right. You're not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, that's also true. Thank you very much, Sue. Here's what else is coming up on the exchange.
Ahead, not opioids and not talc. Another Johnson & Johnson lawsuit emerges. Is an Apple VR headset ahead? The billionaire tax rate set a new record. And your work may be monitoring more than you think. It's all coming up on the exchange.
There's golf. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
At Argos, save up to 25% off furniture across thousands of lines. Our autumn-winter home and furniture collection is here. So stylish, you can wear it. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 22nd of October. Offer excludes nursery, bathroom and garden furniture. Conditions apply, subject to availability selected lines.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
If you can drive a van that's built in Britain, with class-leading fuel economy on every run, to Middlesex to do some masonry, or to Tunbridge, carrying well over a ton. Yours is the all-new Vauxhall Vivaro, and you'll be driving a great Brit van, my son. All-new Vauxhall Vivaro carries British business. To find out more, search New Vauxhall Vivaro.
Chase the sun with TUI to over 40 long-haul destinations. Explore the beautiful beaches of Jamaica, sip margaritas in Mexico, or see the many wonders of Asia. And until the 26th of October, enjoy £150 off per booking. When you fly with us, we'll take you there on one of our state-of-the-art Dreamliner planes. TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. T's and C's apply. Minimum spend £1,200 and available on selected holidays. See website for details. Atoll protected.
Delta CEO, first read on Q3 numbers. Can the airline keep its winning streak aloft? Or is there turbulence ahead for investors? Squawk Box tomorrow.
Welcome back. Let's catch you up on a couple stories that should be on your radar today. It is time for Rapid Fire. Here to break down the headlines are Robert Frank, Meg Terrell, and Bill Griffith. And first up is another blow to Johnson & Johnson. Shares of J&J are lower today. They were hit with an $8 billion verdict over marketing for an antipsychotic drug, Risperdal. This after J&J has already been embroiled with opioid and talc lawsuits going back to 2018. Shares are basically flat since then. How big a deal is this new and kind of latest ruling, Meg?
Yeah, well, if you look at the stock today, clearly investors don't expect this $8 billion award to stand. It did kind of come out of nowhere, though. I mean, people are used to thinking about J&J litigation in terms of opioids and in terms of talc. Now, this has to do with a different drug, Risperdal, and more cases are potentially on the horizon here for J&J. This $8 billion award was punitive damages. The guy in the case, the plaintiff, had already been awarded about $680,000 in compensatory damages. And the fact that the punitive damages are that high, A, probably means that they're going to be set aside by a judge. But B, probably says something about the way juries are thinking about pharmaceutical companies right now.
That's a good point.
They are the least popular industry in the United States.
I'm not trying to downplay this, but the main issue here was that it leads to breast growth in boys, right? I mean, were there other health complications and problems, and I mean, lives lost?
That was the claim here for one plaintiff, that when he was taking this as a 9-year-old, that it caused breast growth, and that J&J allegedly downplayed the risks of that. Now compare that to the talcum cases, for example. A big award last year was $4.7 billion to 22 women who claimed that J&J's talcum powder products caused their ovarian cancer. So what a lot of people in the space are saying is, this looks like a huge outsized award for one person, considering
and
what
there's
happened.
10,000 potential more people in similar lawsuits.
And here's what I don't understand, and you alluded to it. You've got the now Risperdal, you've got the talc lawsuits, and the opioid lawsuits. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of suits that are facing this company. And yet, when you look at the stock, go back 10 years. You know, this is about the time that they've been going through all of this. The stock is not moving. I don't understand.
Pretty soon you're talking real money.
Well,
But here's the thing.
How can this not have a material impact on the company?
But this thing, as Meg said, look, the stock's not down that much. It's down 2%. That's $6 billion off their market cap today. So yes, you can say $8 billion. It's not going to be $8 billion. But the investors just took $6 billion off the stock today, so maybe it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Over the past decade, the S&P is up. I mean, how much? So if you look at the opportunity cost, let's say, yeah, sure, it's been steady, but it should have arguably been rallying considerably during that time, and it's not. So
well, we'll never know, will we?
We will never know. But Megan, this one, if they. When will we know if they're going to dramatically reduce that amount, or if that's, like you said, going to tell us that these juries are not in the mood to be forgiving to pharmaceutical companies, right?
Well, so it'll be the judge who will decide whether to set aside this. And most people I've talked to do say it looks like a violation of due process, so it's likely to be reduced or set aside. Yeah. If not, J&J will appeal, and that can take a lot longer, obviously.
Right. Many more years
Indeed.
For this to play out. Next, a new note from a leading Apple analyst at TF Securities in Taiwan says Apple is set to unveil a bunch of new hardware in the first half of next year, and he says that includes new augmented reality glasses. Apple shares up about 1% today, but significantly, guys, are within reach of their all-time highs from 2018.
So I did some market research this morning and looked at all the AR glasses that are out there right now. At the high end, $2,700, $2,800 are these goggles that are used by technicians on assembly lines for high-tech assembly. Pretty cool stuff. On the low end, $450 for athletes. Who ride bicycles or run to help them keep track of their time and their distance and all that as they're going. So that's pretty cool as well. In the middle are these for these people that want to do their iPhone stuff, the social media, read your email, text and all that stuff without using your hands. Who wants to do that? I mean,
they're talking about augmented reality. I want de-augmented reality. I have enough augmentation in my life already.
Yes.
How about simplified reality, where you get rid of all the stuff you don't need rather than adding more data to what you're looking at every single day?
You the other day told us you might be interested in glasses, Robert, that could do some of the functionality for the phone, right?
If they could remind me of someone's name when I see them, I would. That's all I need.
Birthday.
Everything else I get
I will
rid of.
say, actually, as a mom holding a baby who often falls asleep on me, I have dreamed of something. Even my Apple Watch isn't quite enough sometimes. I'm like, if only there was a chip in my brain where I could summon a cup of coffee.
Amen. Amen. Final thing on this.
Wait a minute, that's why God created husband.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, but I had to summon him to bring me.
Okay, all right.
Is this too much of a reach for Apple? Again, if we assume this really is coming, is it too gimmicky? Or is this possibly, I mean, every time we've seen someone try these, I take your point, Bill, that they are actually being used out there, but every other product launch, whether it's the Snap
Google
Spectacles,
Glasses.
has been kind of a dud.
Right. I mean, they have gone nowhere. And remind me again, I thought Apple wanted to be a service-oriented company. Now they're coming up with another piece of hardware that has a questionable
Well, yeah, but it
use
summons
and
your
value.
husband to get you a coffee.
Well,
It is hard to question Apple, though, when it comes out with something. I mean, isn't that the whole story, that they're a fast follower, that they do things better than everybody else? So I'd be excited to see it.
We'll see.
The bar is going to be high if they're really going this route. How about this? A new study shows that in 2018, America's richest billionaires paid a lower effective tax rate than the working class for the first time ever. The study claims the overall tax rate for the 400 richest households in America was 23% last year, a percentage point lower than the rate for the bottom half of households. And critics say the data used in the study is questionable. So we bring in Robert.
Yeah, so this is a study done by Emmanuel Saez and Gabriel Zuckman. They are two economists at University of Berkeley. They are advising Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders on their wealth tax plan, so they clearly have a political alignment here. And the widespread data shows just the opposite, whereas these guys are saying the wealthy pay a lower rate than everyone else. What they're really looking at is if you add up all the taxes that you pay, federal, state, local, driver's licenses, hunting licenses, payroll taxes.
Cost of living.
Everything that you pay a tax for. If you compare that to your income, they're saying the wealthy have a lower share in total taxes than the bottom 50%.
Which, by
so that's a strange comparison, number one. Number two, they did a lot of strange things like they took out the earned income tax credit. They estimate the 2018 taxes for the wealthy by looking at corporate profits and then somehow allocating that to the richest. So if you look at the established data, and Jason Furman, who used to advise Obama, put out a great tweet on this where he showed his own version of this data, which shows the wealthy pay around 30% and the middle pays around 20%. So
right.
it is less.
That's the data I've seen too. ITEP, ITP,
Yeah,
33%,
exactly.
like all in federal, local,
right.
state, about 33%
That's
for
right.
the 1%, 22%. Again, you could argue, people might argue,
People
that
want
I want it
believe,
to be more
right
progressive,
now in
but-
this environment, in this Democratic primary, people want to believe this, which is that the rich are getting off and they're paying a lower rate. Now, look, it's fine to argue the wealthy should pay more, and we need more money for social systems. But it's just the facts are the facts, the numbers are the numbers, and these numbers are different from everyone else.
It's meant to be a campaign trail talker.
Absolutely.
It's meant to be an indictment of the 2018 Tax Cut Jobs Act. Finally, before we go, folks these days most worried about Facebook and Google spying on them, but they're not the only ones watching. A new survey of medium and large-sized companies finds your boss is spying on you too. And this, I'm seeing more and more stories about this, people. This survey estimates by next year, 80% of businesses will be tracking employees in some way, including through your phone, your calendar meetings, even your facial expressions on your laptop camera.
We could be being watched right now? Is that what you're saying?
Never get the sense we're on camera.
Welcome to our world.
What was really interesting in this story, though, was that they were talking about employers doing this for their employees' benefits, to try to assess whether they're happy at work, whether they're using their time in ways that are good for them. It seemed a lot Big Brother.
We had a guest just the other day on whose company is meant to do this. He said, it's meant to help people at work be happy. Okay, great. Whatever the motivation is.
Sure, that's why they're doing it. They just want to make sure we're happy.
The IRS says their job is to provide quality service for taxpayers. It's the same thing. Like, no, it's not.
You'll know that you're being spied on when the boss brings you a cup of coffee all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah,
You know what?
exactly. Asking for it.
Bring me some coffee.
Yeah, Meg's like, look at my calendar, have at it.
Exactly.
But I think there was a big takeout on this in the Journal a couple of months, over the summer. I do think people are realizing, okay, if I have just one device, I'm one of these people, I have one device, and I understand the contract, okay? If I want to check my work email on that phone, well, they might be seeing what else I'm up to. I don't know exactly what else, but it is a little unnerving.
Do the other stuff on your own phone.
Yeah, well, but Bill, how many hands do we have, Meg?
I do have two phones.
I just feel sorry for whoever has to sit through all this boring data at the end of every day, in the case of me, anyway.
Yeah, you say, go ahead. You can manage my calendar while you're at it. Very good. Guys, thank you all. Robert Frank, Meg Terrell, and Bill Griffith. Still ahead, it's the battle of the blacklist, with the U.S. adding some of China's most important unicorns. We're going to look at which companies there are being targeted and why they pose a threat. Take a quick look, too, at shares of Target hitting another all-time high today. They're now up 67% year-to-date, the best annual performance since 1997. We're back in 2.
The problem with traditional cotton sheets.
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month, with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
If you can drive a van that's built in Britain, with class-leading fuel economy on every run, to Middlesex to do some masonry, or to Tunbridge carrying well over a ton, yours is the all-new Vauxhall Vivaro, and you'll be driving a great Brit van, my son. All-new Vauxhall Vivaro carries British business. To find out more, search New Vauxhall Vivaro.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium. This Thursday, hear the home and away call as the second-place NFC East New York Giants visit the first-place AFC East New England Patriots at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It is long enough, and it is good!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
These are the top stories everyone's talking about on TuneIn.
Jenny McCarthy loves Donnie Wahlberg snoring.
He's been on FaceTime on his side of the pillow, and I lay next to him. He has like sleep apnea, so if I don't hear him snore, I'll wake up and be like, snore, wake up. It is romantic.
Here's a trending moment from last night's episode of The Voice.
You have so many different sides to your voice, so much personality. To be able to really tell the story from your heart, that's the most important thing, really.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Suzanne Summers attempts to sing the Three's Company theme on live TV.
Okay. Knock on our door. We've been waiting for you. Where the kisses are hers and hers and his. Three's Company too.
Why don't you search TuneIn to find all the latest for yourself?
Welcome back. Tech is becoming a bigger pawn in the U.S.-China trade war as the U.S. moves to blacklist some of China's most important unicorns. For more, let's go to Deirdre Bosa in San Francisco with a look at which companies, Deirdre, have been singled out here.
Kelly, this time it is some of China's most promising up-and-coming tech startups like Huawei. Before them, they are critical to China's tech dominance and particularly its artificial intelligence ambitions. Now, they also have ties to major U.S. institutions and investors that could now be threatened. SenseTime, last valued at $7.5 billion, is backed by SoftBank, Fidelity, Qualcomm, Silver Lake. It has partnered with MIT on an AI program. Now, though, MIT tells us in a statement that they're reviewing the relationship and will modify any interactions as necessary. Take Megvii as well, worth $4 billion in the private market, has filed for a $1 billion IPO in Hong Kong. Its underwriters are Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and Citigroup. In light of the company's addition to the blacklist, Goldman says that it's evaluating its involvement in the IPO. JP Morgan and Citi declined to comment. Now, Kelly, there are other companies in that list like Yitu and Hangzhou Hikvision that are also critical to China's battle for tech supremacy. And as we've seen, China's not going to take this lying down. Kelly?
Yeah, Deirdre, stay right there with us. Let's also bring in Kate Vizzini, who's a technology reporter for CNBC. So, Kate, are these companies, is the technology that they're using simply being nefariously used because it's the Chinese using it, or is the technology itself problematic?
I think we can back up a little bit, and maybe if you look at this from the point of view of somebody in the intelligence community, these companies are certainly a security risk. They're a security risk because of the infrastructure that they provide, in the sense that if we're not having the best relations with China, having a great deal of our infrastructure provided by the Chinese with ties to their government is problematic. And what's different about these companies when compared with Huawei, which we've already discussed this issue with, is many of these companies have even stronger ties to the Chinese government. Some of them are partially owned by the government.
So when we blacklisted these companies, it sounded like we were saying, look, the reason is the way they're being used to oppress the Uyghur population in China. But what you're saying is that there's sort of two motivations here. One is to maybe punish these entities for that behavior, but the other is to make sure that they don't become more deeply ingrained in the U.S. market. Is that right?
I think that's exactly right. And the intelligence community has been saying for many years, for more than a decade, that these companies pose some sort of risk. A couple of years ago, Hikvision is a good example of a company that ended up in the news because so many of their cameras, their surveillance cameras, sophisticated surveillance cameras, were used at military bases and government agencies and other government institutions. And it was a little bit of a controversy. So it has been from long before the Uyghur Muslim population had faced the oppression that they face, these companies have been under scrutiny by the U.S. intelligence community. I'm sure that they welcome this move by the Trump administration.
Deirdre, any word as to whether this is a permanent move or is it a pawn in the trade talks? And are there U.S. companies that can kind of step up into the void here if the void will exist?
That's a really good question, Kelly. I think they could potentially win exemptions, as we've seen in the past. Certainly, it looks like a pawn in the trade war, even though administration officials say that it's not. But a good question is, can U.S. companies step in? Same kind of discussion around Huawei. And put simply, the U.S. hasn't embraced artificial intelligence, facial recognition in the same way that Chinese companies and the Chinese government have. So it is a long way to get there. But I also want to bring up that we're talking about the U.S. blacklisting Chinese startups. Remember that for years and years, some of the U.S. biggest tech companies, the giants, the Googles, Facebooks, Twitters, have not been able to operate in China. So while we talk about them having trouble sourcing supplies from the U.S., remember that this has been going on for a very long time, involving the biggest U.S. companies.
And Kate, that's why I wonder, is this now a permanent separation or not? If there's even the threat that these could be used inappropriately by the Chinese in the future.
What makes it a little bit more difficult, I think, with the Chinese technologies as well, is that a lot of our allies in Europe and across the world have embraced some of these technologies. One of the forensics technologies that was blacklisted, Maya Pico, they were recently held up by Interpol as one of the great new technologies. So these are big organizations. If they're using this technology and we are not, we might, rub each other the wrong way at some point, I think, and it could cause some issues.
Wow. Guys, thank you. Appreciate it. Kate Vizzini, Deirdre Bosa with the latest on that news. Thank you so much today. Coming up, it's a power shutdown of an unprecedented scale. Nearly 800,000 California homes and businesses will be impacted as PG&E hopes to prevent a repeat of last year's deadly forest fires. We have all the details on these drastic measures straight ahead.
You may know Viking for our award-winning river cruises. But did you know Viking is also the best at sea? Voted by readers of Travel and Leisure 4 years in a row. Discover fascinating destinations and enriching activities on our elegant ocean ships. Designed for just 930 like-minded travelers. Viking, exploring the world in comfort.
We're the Nigerian brothers. John's been a professional trader for over 37 years, and Pete is one of the country's top 100 traders. On TV, we report on how we follow the smart money from Wall Street's elite, who have the massive resources to get market information before the rest of us. Their unusual option activity tells us what they're starting to trade. Our strategy uncovers why they're trading it and how to follow along for the biggest return. It works on stocks and options. It's the #1 way we choose our trades. Many of you ask, how can you do it too? So we laid out our strategy in our newest book, revealing things we've never revealed. And today we're giving some copies away for free. All you have to do is cover shipping.
Prefer video learning? Get John and Pete's new DVD for free too. Call 1-800-540-7070 or go to followthesmartmoney.com to get your free book and DVD. Call 1-800-540-7070 or go to followthesmartmoney.com now.
A new season, new surroundings, and a #1 overall makes his Wednesday night hockey debut. Devils, Flyers, 7:30 Eastern on NBCSN.
This is a pair of Warby Parker glasses. They start at $95, including prescription lenses. Right now, we're watching them go through a hinge test, which is used to test the, well, you get it. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
This is Kate.
Hey.
She takes 2 prescriptions. Kate's son Jack takes 1 too. Kate works hard and thought she had good insurance. But she still pays too much. That's no good. So Kate downloaded the GoodRx app. Now she can compare prescription prices to find the best discounts. She even beats her insurance price. Good for you, Kate. Good for you. GoodRx. Stop paying too much for your prescriptions. Download the free app today.
Hi, I'm Hanno. I created Gabi because most people overpay on car insurance. Gabi is a free tool that saves you money by finding the best deal. Gabi users save more than $800 per year on average. Go to Gabi.com and stop overpaying for car insurance.
Welcome back to The Exchange. If you log in to the PG&E website right now, this is the first thing you'll see. The company calls it an event, but it's not one you want to be part of. PG&E has begun shutting power off in parts of 34 northern, central, and coastal California counties, impacting nearly 800,000 homes and businesses. And this is expected to last several days. The blackout is the largest power shutdown to date, as utilities across the state are trying to reduce wildfire risks in the face of hot, windy weather. Malfunctions with equipment have been tied to some of California's most destructive and deadly fires. This is its biggest gambit yet to prevent that this season. Coming up, why the so-called woke culture seems to be fast asleep now when it comes to the NBA's China drama. We'll explain that next. And we're less than 10 minutes away from getting new clues into the Fed's thinking and its internal divisions. Those the Fed minutes due out at the top of the hour. Stick around for that. Markets hanging on to their gains. Dow's up more than 200 points. The Exchange is back in 2.
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
You're a small business owner and there's nothing small about what you do. That's why Dell Small Business Technology Advisors give you trusted advice and tailored tech solutions, like computers with Intel Core processors, servers, storage and networking, plus industry-leading monitors and software. No matter your technology needs, Dell is here to help your small business do big things. Call 0800 085 4878 to speak with an advisor today. That's 0800 085 4878.
It's going to be a bit chilly today, and with the worst of winter yet to reach London, you don't want to come home to a broken boiler. We're with you. So that's why with British Gas Home Care, we've got your boiler covered 365 days a year. We have thousands of engineers on hand to help get your boiler up and running again, and all from just 46p a day. Buy selected home care products online by the 28th of October and get 1 month free. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch, because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family want movies, I've got blockbusters. Football, how about the Premier League? Or how about crime dramas? I've got loads, and they're never going to guess who did it. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus, month passes auto renew, terms apply.
A day before the scheduled tip-off between the Brooklyn Nets and the LA Lakers in Shanghai, the battle between the NBA and China continues to heat up. Now, all of the NBA's official Chinese partners have suspended ties. An NBA fan event was canceled. A press event was postponed. A giant poster advertising the game was pulled down. Even exhibition games of the NBA's minor league were canceled. All of this as Commissioner Adam Silver arrived in China today. Can he contain the damage? Let's bring in Andrew Brandt, who's executive director of the Jeffrey Morad Center for Sports Law Study at Villanova University. He's also a former vice president for the Green Bay Packers. Andrew, so look, this is a tough one for Adam Silver.
Yeah.
What does he need to do now, do you think?
Yeah, Kelly, he's trying to do this tightrope between business interests with China. We has a huge $1.5 billion deal with Tencent, where he has great business ties, where he sees an incredible global expansion market, and then supporting social causes, human rights, civil rights, which he's been so supportive of for NBA players and coaches that have spoke out in the past. He's trying to do a little damage control right now because he is supportive, albeit late, of Daryl Morey, the general manager who supported Hong Kong in a tweet, the protesters.
Right.
He's trying to do this damage control, so we'll see. He's running it's a very tightrope that he's trying to walk here.
Which situation will be tougher for him to resolve, to please the Chinese or to please fans in the U.S. who are upset with in the NBA's initial response here?
I think the Chinese thing will work out. There's been some suspension. That's the key word. Some of these partners have suspended based on what's going on right now, but they'll be back. They understand the business opportunity on the other side. But I think, as you said, what's going on here, we have seen the NBA as this, for lack of a better word, this woke league that supports social causes, that's very into civil rights, that would never censure coaches like Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich and LeBron for saying things in support of against inequality and supporting human rights and civil rights. And Adam Silver supported gay pride and withheld an all-star game from Charlotte for the bathroom bill in North Carolina.
Right.
They've censured and taken a franchise away from Donald Sterling, the Clippers, for racist comments. And now this. And there's been crickets from anyone trying to support Daryl Morey for this. Now, these coaches and players have supported human rights unequivocally. But here, there is nothing. There is silence from Daryl Morey. So I think the backlash here is going to be, well, the NBA is just like these other leagues. They're conservative. They really don't support. They're about the business. It's all about the money.
Right,
the money
conservative
talks and
in the
else
small
walks.
C sense, meaning in the way that they do business, they're really just looking out for their own interests. You know, you mentioned the players, which is super interesting here because unlike the NFL anthem protests, those were player-driven. This is not so much. The NBA players themselves here do a ton of good, especially the top players, the LeBrons, the Kevin Durants. They sell a ton of shoes in China. I don't think we're likely to see the players stick their necks out on this issue, are we?
No, listen, the star player for the Rockets, Daryl Morey's team, in a sense, apologized for Daryl Morey's comments.
James Harden, yep.
His star player went in there and apologized to the Chinese people. So this is not something that Daryl Morey is getting any support on. He's hanging, twisting in the wind here. The NBA has supported him, but they're running a fine line. But yes, players realize there would be consequences to their brand, to their marketing, and maybe to their employment. So they're being quiet right now.
Does it matter? I don't even have time really to ask you the question, Andrew, but I just wonder if the backlash here at home is not among the core fans, and the core fans are going to stay watching the product because on the issues they care about politically in the U.S., the NBA and its players are still on the right side of this one. Andrew, I know we got to go, but thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, the popularity is still there. It's not going to affect that.
I agree. Andrew Brandt, appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
That does it for the exchange today. We got to go a bit early. Why? Because the Fed minutes are coming up at the top of the hour. Power Lunch has them. It starts right now.
We'll see you over here, Kelly. Welcome to Power Lunch. Let's get a check on the markets as we are just moments away from the minutes from the last Federal Reserve meeting. The Dow is higher by 195 points. S&P 500, this is just about 4 points off of the session highs here. We got the minutes breaking right now to Elon Moy in D.C. with the details. Elon.
Melissa, the minutes show that the Fed is divided not just over the September rate cut, but also how to talk about the path of policy going forward. And during the meeting, a few officials argued that the market appears to be factoring in more rate cuts than they believed appropriate. They said that it could become necessary for the committee to, quote, seek a better alignment of market expectations and policymakers' expectations. Several participants also urged Chairman Jay Powell to provide more clarity about when this period of recalibration could likely come to an end. Now, in the press conference after the meeting and during his speech this week, Powell has repeatedly pointed to the period during the late 1990s when the Fed cut rates multiple times at consecutive meetings, but not for an extended period of time. He said that experience was successful, but of course, policy is not on a preset course. Now, on the other hand, a couple of officials at the meeting and in the minutes did argue for a bigger rate cut of 50 basis points and possibly even accompanied by forward guidance. They said that would prevent the U.S. economy from slipping into stagnation. Now, throughout the meeting, there were references to trade tensions, and there was this gnawing concern that the uncertainty that's been weighing on business investment and on manufacturing could lead to a slowdown in hiring, and that could ultimately end up hitting the consumer. Guys, on this volatility in the repo markets, the Fed had a discussion about that. There were also staff presentations about it, but the Fed ultimately just agreed on the need to discuss the appropriate level of reserves in the future. Back over to you.
Elon, thank you very much, Elon Moy. And let's get to Bob Bazzani now, the New York Stock Exchange, for the market's reaction to these Fed minutes. Bob.
Well, essentially, we are unchanged. S&P was up 27 points, Tyler, and right now still up 27 points. Bank stocks, which sometimes move on these, essentially unchanged. The KBE, which is the bank index unchanged. Utilities up 6.7%, 6.7 points, also essentially unchanged on the day. I think that the big issue for the markets is that this is a very different moment than the Fed minutes and the time that actually happened. So remember, since then, we've had weaker ISM survey, we've had weaker consumer confidence numbers, and I think a lot of people feel the market's changed rather different, is a lot different than when the last Fed minutes actually came out. So only 7 members favored a rate cut in the past, and the question is, I didn't quite hear whether there was a significant shift at all there, but the markets are basically treating this as a status quo report. I think the key thing here is still 75% chance of a rate cut for the next month and about 50% in December. Kelly, back to you.
All right, Bob, thanks very much. Let's head to the CME and get the bond market reaction now with Rick Santelli. Rick?
Well, if we start out with the dollar index, because lately, the strength in the dollar has been a big issue, especially for the administration and to some extent the Fed/Treasury. Not much movement there. We were down a couple of ticks in the dollar index. It moved to unchanged. We're back to about where we started. 2-year note yields, they had a 1 basis point pop. They moved up to 147. They're now back at 145. 10 years, they hugged at 158 and they've drifted a bit. Now, do keep in mind, at these current yields in 2s and 10s, should they close here, those would be 1-week high yield closes. So we are getting a little upward lift. But if you move away from the markets and look at the context of what was in those minutes, I think that is going to have a lot of articles written tonight. I'm sure it'll be a lot on CNBC.com. The fact that they're having this discussion about the markets always wanting more at a time where you probably shouldn't dole out more rate cuts is the correct discussion at the right time, and I think that is the story in the minutes. Tyler, back to you.
All right, Rick, we'll talk about that a little more right now and get reaction to those Fed minutes from Tom Porcelli. He's chief U.S. economist with RBC Capital Markets, and Kevin Nicholson. He is chief market strategist with Riverfront Investment Group and also the COO of River Shares. What do you think of what Rick just said, Tom, there about whether the Fed should be cutting as it is?
Yeah,
that the market wants it.
Right.
Should the Fed feed the market?
I mean, the reality is that the market has been winning. The market continues to get what it wants, and I think that'll happen this time around too. And I think one of the other reporters noted that sort of only 7 members are looking for cuts versus 10 who do not want to see any more. I think you have to ask, but where are the voters? And I would tell you that the voters those 7 people that are looking for cuts, they're probably all voters. So I think I think the market's going to get what they want. The voters are going to get what they want. I think there's a bigger question about whether or not they're going to cut sort of after the October meeting. I think at this point I don't think it really matters. I think if the data sort of deteriorates,
so you think they will cut in October? You think they will cut in October?
I think there's no question that
Kevin, you're smiling, you're nodding.
Yes, I definitely think that they're going to cut in October. The Fed has been letting the markets lead the way for the last, 3 meetings. And I think that this one is no different. When you look at Fed funds futures, they're saying, it's 75, 80% chance of a cut in October. And I think that that's going to happen. Definitely.
Some would say that the markets have been leading for the past year. I mean, ever since the Powell pivot, it's been the markets that has driven the Fed to change the tone, to change the stance, and the market has been right.
Yeah.
Would you concede that or no?
Yeah, I think that the market has been right, but it comes a point, though, that the Fed's going to have to stand on its own 2 feet and say enough is enough, because think about if we keep cutting when the economy is actually doing well, what is going to happen when things go south? We're not going to have any dry powder. And Fed Chairman Powell said yesterday that part of their toolbox was that negative rates was not part of their toolbox. So where do we go? What are we going to use?
So, Tom, does the economy warrant more rate cuts right now?
So I think what we have to ask ourselves is it hurting? And I think is
what hurting?
Cutting rates.
Yeah.
Is cutting rates going to hurt in some way? In other words, if we actually don't need cuts, by cutting, are you setting ourselves up for some imbalance down the road? And I think the short answer to that is probably not. I think that I can make the argument for, sort of multiple years down the road, if we actually get out of this and things actually do really start to sort of pick up again, that you could create one of these imbalances and you sort of overusage of credit, et cetera. But so many things would have to happen between now and then for that dynamic to play out. So I think from the Fed's perspective, they view this as sort of a low-cost way of helping the market continue to sort of embrace, hey, things are actually not too bad and we're here to help. Let me be clear. I'm telling you what the Fed is thinking on this. If I was sitting at the Fed, I would not be cutting rates. So again, a short answer to your question, I do not believe the backdrop actually warrants cutting rates. But in an environment where the market is demanding it, and you run the risk of creating this market dislocation, then sure, that's what the Fed is thinking right now.
Kevin, it sounds like...
I hate that approach, let me be clear. That's where we are.
It sounds like you're worried that if we are in some sort of slowdown or a recession, that the Fed won't have the dry powder, so to speak, to fight it off, so that downturn could be deeper and longer because we can't bank on help from the Fed.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. And so that's why when I look at where we are, you're at a 50-year low on unemployment rate. So the Fed has met that mandate. Inflation is below their 2% target, but the Fed has also created a third mandate, and that third mandate is to worry about global growth. That's not part of, the U.S.'s mandate for the Fed, but that's what the Fed is now looking at. And so in thinking about, global growth, I understand why the Fed is making these cuts, but at the same time, they have to be very careful that we don't go too far because the toolbox will be empty.
All right.
Just to that point, I would say, but let's be clear, the Fed is just going to roll into more QE. Right. I mean, when things actually do deteriorate in earnest, they're just going to go from whatever cuts that they have left to just rolling into another round of QE. I mean, that is where we are at this point, and that's that.
So why ever sell bonds?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the yield curve is going nowhere. I mean, I think 10s are going nowhere. 10-year yields will stay more or less where we are. I think that will happen for the foreseeable future.
Gentlemen, we got to leave it there. Tom and Kevin, thank you very much.
Wall Street is meanwhile waiting on a possible trade deal this week as meetings are set to resume tomorrow. Stocks jumped early today on reports that China might be open to a partial or skinny deal on trade. If the U.S. holds additional tariffs, then they could be willing to buy more agricultural products, including soybeans. Let's bring in John Rutledge. He's Chief Investment Officer at Sopanod and a CNBC contributor. John, eager to get your 2 cents on this one. I've heard people arguing that we're too pessimistic and others that we're not pessimistic enough about the outcome of talks this week.
Well, I don't really think there's much they can get done this week, given the bullets flying around with blacklists and the like. They can certainly agree to buy each other's stuff. They buy our soybeans, we buy a couple of iWatches, but they're not going to get the main issues accomplished because the policy discussion has moved back in the neocon direction toward how do we stop China from getting big rather than how do we solve the trade war. A very difficult situation.
When you say that it's moved to how do we stop China from getting big, is that going to be related to tariffs? In other words, if this is a goal of the president's, what does that mean for the imposition of more tariffs, the current levels that we're seeing now, and the impact to the economy?
Kelly, there are tariffs already that are planned, and the Chinese would hope to do some kind of a small agreement in order to put those off for a time more. Basically, in China, you look a long way down the road, and in the U.S., you look until next November. So they're watching the clock. And if they can get something done here, that's to their that'll be very good for Xi Jinping and Liu He while he's here this week. But we're not going to get what the structural reforms everyone's looking for in the White House. Asking them to change the way they run their economy in terms of the basic structure is like them coming here and saying, I'd like you to break up the Tennessee Valley Authority. You know, it's really not in line with what we do.
So why do you say that they are looking to come away with something, the Chinese are this week? How much bargaining power do they have? Because lately everyone seems to be talking about this as if they have all the cards and we have none.
Nobody's got any cards at this point. The economy is slowing down everywhere in the world, including here and including in China. So I think there's certain pressure on the political leaders on both sides to do something that'll be viewed as progress. So they could pull a baby rabbit out of a hat by agreeing on more purchases of things. But the meat of the deal is much more serious than that. There's purchases. Intellectual property could get something done, not today, not this week, but the support is there on both sides to do that. What's not there is support for them to stop supporting their state-owned companies, which is basically their welfare system, or to shut down their new technology efforts, Huawei, ZTE, 5G, etc., because that's their growth plan. That's how they plan to go from being an assembler of somebody else's products to a creator of their own product. They're not going to give that up.
John, do you sense within the administration any willingness to postpone or lift or otherwise kind of abrogate the tariffs that have already been put in place or postpone the ones that are planned? Do you think the president is willing to do that?
Well, no. There are really three, when you say in the White House, there are really three different positions there. There's a free market group of advisors. There's a neocon group of advisors. Well, the obvious one is our friend Larry Kudlow, but Larry, Steve, and Wilbur are more market-oriented or deal-oriented. And then there's the neocon side, where Peter is probably the best example of it, but in the shadows you see Mr. Bannon there. And then there's Mr. Trump, who listens to one, then the other, and then tweets out whatever's on his mind. So the instability of our positions on this is really hurting our ability to get anyone to agree to anything, because the rules might change next week. Deals ought to be done in private, in quiet, not on social media.
All right. Well, there's certainly there couldn't be more coverage of the one this week. So again, I don't know if that's a great sign. But John, thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate it. John Rutledge. Coming up, the tensions between the U.S. and China playing out on the court for the NBA, with its preseason kicking off in China as it deals with continued fallout from the pro-Hong Kong tweet. We've got all of those details. And shares of Roku are now surging 8% after Macquarie upgraded the stock, saying its user base could triple in the next 3 years. The analyst behind that call joins us next when we come right back.
This CNBC program.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Otto Sergey now checks for better energy deals so you don't have to. Meaning we can all sit back and relax. Can't we, Sergey? Sergey?
Hey? What?
Tell the people that we can sit back and relax.
Oh, we can sit back and relax.
Oh, don't waste energy worrying about energy. Automate it with Otto Sergey. Compare the market. Keep life simple.
Customer preferences determine alerts based on tariff type, payment type, supplier rating, and minimum annual saving of £50.
You're 169 in the queue.
I proposed on the 169. She got off for the next stop.
Oh, you're my 169th greatest lover.
The number 169 never screamed going places until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of October 2019. £3,487 and 50p optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Remind you, Thursday night football is happening this week. 8:20 p.m. Eastern is kickoff. We've got the New York Giants at the New England Patriots. Now, to find it, search NFL, favorite your team so you don't miss any of the action.
The under center on the retreat, dropping back. He's pressured. He rolls right. He throws it down the right side for an open Bolden. Catches the 5 into the end zone. Touchdown!
Make sure to favorite your team and search NFL. That way you don't miss any of the games. That's your TuneIn Sports Update.
At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with Fox's full lineup of shows. Plus, when news breaks, Fox has you covered with live updates and expert analysis on the biggest developing stories. Listen to Fox News Talk anytime on TuneIn.
Shares of Roku jumping more than 8% following an upgrade from Macquarie. It's now up nearly 300% this year. Macquarie estimating Roku's user base could double or even triple by 2022 as more and more streaming services become available. Joining us now is the analyst behind the call, Tim Nolan, Senior Media Analyst at Macquarie. Tim, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
It looks, according to your note, like there are a few levers as to how you get to that number by 2020. So I want to tackle one of them, and that is the integration into smart TV operating systems. How should we think about that in terms of the growth trajectory, and does that further their market share here in the United States specifically?
Well, Roku's device growth is a matter of two things, as I think of it. One is the sticks or the boxes that we're accustomed to, and another is the integrations with the smart TVs. And they've had very good success in the U.S. Over the last few years with that growth. And now as they are basically launching internationally, we expect that will help drive the growth there as well. We don't necessarily try to break down the player devices versus the smart TV OEM integrations, but we think both will be very important drivers for them to add users into 2022 and beyond.
Doesn't it matter the mix? I mean, I would think that an integration into an OS would be more profitable for Roku than, say, the hardware.
I don't know if I can comment on the profitability. We don't know. They certainly don't break that out in any way. I would just say both methods are important growth drivers. They announced a deal with Hisense in Europe already. We anticipate there will be more to come, but that's just based on the fact that they've been successful with a number of OEMs in the U.S. to date, and assuming that they can do the same abroad.
And speaking of abroad and growth there, you say that you think that the trajectory could be like that of Netflix. Why is that, especially when we have such limited information about Roku's plans abroad?
Well, a few things that we've done is to try to look at the penetration rates for connected TV devices. So that's the devices themselves and then the OEM integrations. And we believe that number outside the U.S. is only about 20% of households versus something perhaps more like 70% in the U.S. So we assume that that will continue to grow internationally, perhaps accelerate from here as you have Roku and Amazon Fire TV and others, I think, expanding rapidly. So that's an important driver of it. I wouldn't want to forget as well, a big part of the growth story here really is the advertising ecosystem that Roku builds on top of the devices. So it's not just the device sales that really drive Roku's revenue and profits. It's more so the connected TV advertising that is built on top of that.
Could Roku be potentially a very attractive target for one of these bigger players?
I suppose it's always possible. I think one advantage Roku has had, though, has been its independence all this time. I mean, there is no conflict in terms of hosting any apps from any providers. There's no conflicts in terms of getting onto devices. So I think that has been something that's helped them all of this time, and they've certainly done a good job really creating and defining the category in the U.S. thus far. So I don't think that's necessarily the plan. Certainly could be in the cards, but it's not the plan.
Does your bullish case get burnished by the fact that there are so many new players offering their own streaming services, or does that not matter?
Not so much new players offering new streaming services. I mean, I think actually behind the positive view here is that the rise of new streaming services like Disney Plus and others will only encourage more consumers to watch on connected devices. Now, some of those are not necessarily ad-supported, but they will engender a more robust connected TV ecosystem in general. And on these ecosystems, you'll have a lot of the ad-supported apps, Hulu and various other ad-supported OTT apps. And so consumers will watch more and more of those. Roku Channel has been successful. Pluto TV has been successful. These are all ad-supported OTT streaming services. And just the rise of this in general, I think, will encourage more and more CTV consumption and therefore more and more CTV advertising for those that are ad-supported.
CTV being connected TV, of course. Tim, thanks so much for your time. Yeah. Appreciate it. Tim Nolan, Macquarie.
All right, shares of Johnson & Johnson are falling after a jury decision to award $8 billion to the plaintiff in a lawsuit involving its antipsychotic drug. Those details are coming up. And Apple creeping back to its all-time high. What's driving the moves and whether there's still time to get in. That's next.
The S&P 500, the benchmark.
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's Smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
If you can drive a van that's built in Britain, with class-leading fuel economy on every run, to Middlesex to do some masonry, or to Tunbridge carrying well over a ton, yours is the all-new Vauxhall Vivaro, and you'll be driving a great Brit van, my son. All-new Vauxhall Vivaro carries British business. To find out more, search New Vauxhall Vivaro.
When it comes to keeping your small business valuable information safe, Dell Small Business Technology Advisors can recommend tailored security solutions, like computers with Intel Core processors, servers, storage, networking, plus industry-leading monitors and software. Running your own small business is a big challenge, but with the right partner, it's a lot easier. To speak with an advisor today, call 0800 085 4878. That's 0800 085 4878.
Fortunately, there's only a 1 in 11 million chance of being bitten by a shark.
Ow!
Oh, unlucky. Never mind, at Curry's PC World, there's a 1 in 10 chance to get half your money back on all 2019 LG OLED TVs, like the LG C9, described by which as simply the best. Its OLED technology brings nature alive with astonishingly accurate colour and clarity, and there's up to £500 off. So the question is, are you feeling lucky? At Curry's PC World. T's and C's apply. GB16 plus. See currys.co.uk.
The nights have started to draw in. And at DFS, we know that can only mean one thing. Everyone will want to spend more time at home, getting nice and cozy. Ah, you can't beat it. That's why all our sofas are handmade to order, and many are guaranteed to be delivered in time for Christmas. So you can look forward to cozying up this winter, knowing your new sofa won't let you down. DFS.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Welcome back to Power Lunch. I'm Mike Santoli at the New York Stock Exchange. Apple shares looking pretty sweet here, sitting near all-time highs after Canaccord Genuity raised its price target on the stock to $260, and a TF Securities analyst said the company was planning new hardware releases, including smart glasses, for 2020. J.C. O'Hara of MKM Partners and Michael Bappas of Bios Advisors at Rockefeller Capital Management are your Trading Nation team today. So, J.C., it's been a pretty impressive march back toward the old highs for Apple. Does it appear stretched to you? What's the smart way to play the stock at this point tactically?
Well, longer term, this is one of the best stocks out there, right? The chart's up 45% year to date, far outpacing the S&P, above every major moving average. So longer term, I think the chart is very constructive. Tactically, though, we are a little concerned, right? Short term, the Apple's slightly overbought. And it's overbought as it's approaching the 2018 highs at $230. And that's going to be an area of resistance. So we have an overbought stock at resistance, right? And that's not the best recipe for a stock that's ready to break out. So tactically, I would love to see the stock pull back a little bit. I think 215 is a great area. That's where the rising 50-day moving average is. That's where horizontal chart support is. I think that is the area that, will make sense to buy a position or to add to an existing position, because at that level, I think Apple will be in a much better technical shape to break out and to make all-time highs.
All right, so maybe a 5% pullback or thereabouts might do it. Michael, from a fundamental basis, not a whole lot has changed, although obviously you got some pretty good reports on the iPhone 11 release. How would you size it up?
Yeah, look, they continue to be the most innovative company in this technological revolution that we're living through. It's a historic revolution. The iPhone 11 sales were better than expected. They're coming out with the 5G phone in 2020. They dominate the market share in all the 4 major wireless networks. They have multiple devices in many households across the country, but what makes them the most attractive is they're a hardware company as well as a services company. And that services side of the business is what's going to drive the revenues and the earnings, and why we think they're still cheap, trading at 17 times earnings with a 1.3% dividend yield.
Still cheap? Not as cheap as it used to be, though, Michael, right?
True, not as cheap as it used to be, but you're going to look back in 18 months, it's going to be cheap right now.
All right. Thanks, guys, JC and Michael, and thank you for joining me on Trading Nation. Head to our website or follow us on Twitter at Trading Nation. Melissa, back over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Ahead on Power Lunch, crisis on the court. The NBA facing more backlash in both the U.S. and China over tweets regarding Hong Kong. Did the league's commissioner mishandle the situation? Our panel will debate that. Plus, Johnson & Johnson hit with an $8 billion fine over side effects from its antipsychotic drug. We'll bring you all the details. And up in smoke as calls against vaping heat up. Could the cannabis industry get caught in the crosshairs? All that and much more when Power Lunch returns.
And now, the latest from tradingnation.cnbc.com and a word from our sponsor.
Many people say don't fight the Fed, but that doesn't mean you have to fear the Fed. If you're a long-term investor, don't let a Fed announcement derail your long-term investing plan. However, if you're a short-term trader, you may want to consider waiting until after a Fed announcement before taking on any new positions. I'm Randy Frederick, and Schwab is the better place for traders.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
To succeed in small business, you need technology that runs efficiently. When you partner with a Dell Small Business Technology Advisor, you get advice, one-on-one partnership, and tailored productivity solutions, including computers with Intel Core processors, servers, storage, networking, plus industry-leading monitors and accessories. It's how they help your small business make the most of every minute. To speak with an advisor today, call 0800 085 4878. That's 0800 085 4878.
The chance of being abducted by aliens is about 1 in 7 million. Oh, unlucky. Never mind, at Curry's PC World, there's a 1 in 10 chance to get half your money back on all 2019 LG OLED TVs, like the LG C9, described by which as simply the best. Its Dolby Atmos gives you a surround sound experience that's out of this world, and there's up to £500 off. So the question is, are you feeling lucky at Curry's PC World? T's and C's apply. GB16 plus. See currys.co.uk.
Welcome aboard Europe's 169th safest airline.
You were like my 169th biggest crush in school.
Your total body age is 169.
The number 169 never screamed glamour until now. Get the Toyota Aygo X-Play for only £169 deposit, then £169 a month with 0% APR representative. Just go. Aygo.
0% APR representative on new sales of Aygo X-Play over 48 months. £169 per month. Customer deposit of £169 when proposed and approved via Access Toyota by 31st of October 2019. £3,487.50 optional final payment. Subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Hello, Vitality Health Insurance.
Oh, hi. Is it true if I join Vitality I get de facto 5-star rated cover, can speak to a GP 24/7, get rewarded for staying active with things like Starbucks coffee, get a little sausage dog to live with me, and you could beat my current premium by up to 10%?
Absolutely. Except one of those.
It's the dog, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to review your health insurance. Just search Vitality Health. Vitality. Positively different. Minimum monthly premiums, terms and conditions apply.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update.
As expected, Carly Pearce and Michael Ray got married over the weekend. It was held at a Nashville area farm and about 100 guests attended. Jake Owen performed his song, Made for You, for the couple's first dance. Carrie Underwood posted a video of herself performing an a cappella version of The Champion, while 8-year-old Savannah DeHaan did it in sign language. The video has gone viral. To hear music from Carly Pearce and Carrie Underwood, search Country Roads on TuneIn.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sue Herrera. Here's your CNBC News Update at this hour. Speaking at a town hall in New Hampshire moments ago, former Vice President Joe Biden, for the first time, called for Donald Trump to be impeached over Trump's public calls for Ukraine to investigate the Biden family.
In full view of the world and the American people,
Donald Trump has violated his oath of office, betrayed this nation, and committed impeachable acts.
School officials in North Carolina are recalling all of that district's 20,000 Chromebooks after one of the devices began smoldering this morning while being used at the third grade classroom. No injuries were reported. Eating healthier may help young adults battle depression. That is the finding from a just-released study out of Australia that looked at nearly 80 students. Although it's a small study, those with a better diet had improved moods and lower anxiety. And they probably weren't hungry either, which always helps. That's the news update at this hour. Melissa, back to you.
All right, Sue. Thank you, Sue Herrera. Let's take a check at the markets right now because it does look like we are making an attempt at session highs at this point. S&P 500 just a couple points away from session highs. 29.22 is your level, up 29 points or just over 1%. The NASDAQ doing the best of the major three, up 1.1% or 88 points. Semiconductors, a real bright spot there, and the Dow is up by 202 points.
Let's take a look at some of the power movers today. Shares of Target are surging to another all-time high as they announce they'll partner with Toys R Us parent company True Kids to help relaunch the children's store's website. Raymond James calling the stock a strong buy. It is up 67% this year. Plus, Lionsgate, the studio behind John Wick and Hunger Games, is jumping as it considers splitting off its Starz premium cable channel into a separate company. That's according to new reports. The shares are up nearly 4%. And Levi is looking a bit stretched. The stock falling despite a third quarter earnings beat. Sales growth slowed for the sixth straight quarter. Shares are down, as I said, about 6%, but they're hovering just above the $17 IPO price that we saw earlier this year.
Well, the controversy involving China and the National Basketball Association deepened today after two fans say they were ejected from an international exhibition game between the Philadelphia 76ers and a Chinese team after holding signs and shouting support for Hong Kong. This as NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is in China. Eunice Yoon has been following the action for us from Beijing.
NBA boss Adam Silver has arrived in China, but he's not receiving the usual warm welcome that commissioners have seen in the past. As of today, the league has lost nearly all its Chinese partners after it backed the Houston Rockets general manager, tweeting his support of the anti-Beijing protesters in Hong Kong. Silver had said that the NBA wouldn't regulate what players, employees, and team owners say. The state media has been in a full tirade comparing what it describes as the Hong Kong riots to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. The China Daily penned an open letter addressing Silver directly, saying the NBA is supporting the wrong side of the divide between Hong Kong protesters and Beijing. It reads, the so-called defense of certain figures that committed anti-human deeds in history might all lead to trouble, even criminal charges. We respect these as the bottom lines of freedom of speech in Western societies, and we hope the West can also respect our bottom lines. The NBA appears to be standing its ground. An event for fans Wednesday has been canceled, but an exhibition game between the Lakers and the Nets set for Thursday in Shanghai is still on. Silver is scheduled to attend the pregame press briefing. Eunice Yoon, CNBC Business News, Beijing.
All right, thank you, Eunice. So as the NBA faces backlash in both the U.S. and China, how can the Professional Sports League do damage control and rebuild its relationships abroad while still adhering to its principles? With us now is Mike Jackson, CEO and president of Modus One, and Paul Argenti, professor of corporate communications at the Dartmouth Tuck School of Business. Welcome to both of you. Professor, let me begin with you. Was the NBA's initial response a failure, and have they slowly but surely started to get it right?
Yeah, I think so. I think, in the beginning they were trying to thread the needle and not offend China and not really support Maury. But I think now they realize they have no choice but to support him and the whole right to free speech. And it shows the lack of planning that goes into thinking about doing business in places like China. And I've seen this with lots of other companies before. You have to be political.
The initial NBA statement, Professor, said that it was, quote, regrettable that the tweet had deeply offended many of our friends and fans in China. And then it went on in, I guess I would say, very careful language to say that the league still stood for the ability of its employees to speak on issues of personal concern. So it wasn't as though they totally capitulated here, Paul, was it?
No, they didn't. I mean, that's more than most companies would do. But you could see that they were trying to thread that needle, not really offend China, not really support him. And I think that's the worst place to be. I mean, either come out strong. And what's wrong with supporting freedom of speech, which is not really the only issue here, but it seems like something that should be easy for the NBA to do.
So Mike, let me just turn to you. The NBA is not the only company that does business in China. Hundreds, maybe thousands of American companies do. And they could just as easily have found themselves in this kind of situation if one of their employees had spoken out, maybe improvidently, maybe not, but certainly spontaneously.
Well, the NBA, having spent the last 20 years approximately developing their business in China, they know what topics are really taboo. I remember when I was an executive with General Motors and our sales in China topped our sales in North America. We took a contingent of about 30 people to spend a couple weeks with our counterparts, our joint venture partners in China. And clearly there were topics back in those days like Tibet and Taiwan, and you don't talk about Tiananmen Square, and I would be safe to say that Hong Kong would be added to that list today. So, it's clearly important for companies to really understand that just the sheer amount of consumerism taking place in China represents a big opportunity. But the NBA is a lot more savvy, and unfortunately, Mr. Mori opened his mouth at the wrong time.
Well, what would you tell a company, Mike, that is embroiled in a mess like this and now faces boycotts here in the United States from people who are outraged by the fact that the company is not supporting free speech of its U.S. employees, as well as protests potentially in China? I mean, this could really be a huge morass on both sides of the ocean for a company that gets itself in this kind of mess.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because I think the second statement that Paul referenced earlier, when they came out and strongly support their employees and the ability to, personally speak, their mind and what they believe, that's a stand that they can't compromise on. But also, they have to understand that, we've got this trade war going on with China. We in the NBA should understand, what the dialogue of the propaganda machine is kind of spewing out and what the perspective is there. But clearly, they've got some work to do to put this thing back together. And hopefully, Adam can tap into some of the relationships that he's built, over the last 5 or 10 years to kind of mitigate this situation and get back on strong footing. And because the game is so popular over there.
Yeah, and in fact, there were fans, I guess, who wanted refunds from Tencent if they were not going to be showing these games, Paul. So there is some leverage on the U.S. side. Going back to the NBA, though, this tweet came from a general manager. It did not come from a player. And I don't know if we're going to see any more tweets coming from players, if this is going to have the kind of groundswell that we saw with the NFL anthem protest, for example. These players, especially the most famous ones, do huge business. They do huge sneaker business in China. They are familiar with the market. They know it well. They might not, as many of them have said, they don't know. They don't want to, have to know the full sort of issue. But it doesn't sound like they're going to be continuing to speak out on this, right?
Yeah, and that's really sad. I mean, the thing is, you should be able to call it as it is, and I think what we know that is going on is not something that most of these players would probably support. But on the other hand, they want to make a lot of money, and you have to think about what your values are and what you're willing to stand for. And I think for the most part, companies and a lot of individuals give lip service to freedom and freedom of speech, and then when push comes to shove, they do what's most expedient to make the money that is there in China. The NBA has an opportunity here because they have leverage, and they are a very successful operation that China would like. So they should take advantage of that. I really think they should do something to try to take advantage of it.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. Paul Argenti and Mike Jackson, thank you.
Thank you.
American Airlines is grounding Boeing 737 MAX until next year now. JP Morgan is less animated about Disney's earnings, and the year's hottest move is doing the C-suite shuffle. All of that is coming up in the tasting menu, and that's next.
The Bond Report.
The chance of being hurt while using a leaf blower is about 3,000 to 1. Ooh, unlucky. Never mind, at Curry's PC World, there's a 1 in 10 chance to get half your money back on all 2019 LG OLED TVs, like the LG C9, described by which as simply the best. Get blown away with Apple AirPlay, Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa built in, and there's up to £500 off. So the question is, are you feeling lucky at Curry's PC World? T's and C's apply. GB16 plus. See currys.co.uk.
Did you know TuneIn doesn't just live here on your smart speaker? From the audio that moves you to the audio that gets you moving. Soundtrack your every movement with the free TuneIn app. Available on your phone or tablet. Download TuneIn on the App Store today. It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update.
As expected, Carly Pearce and Michael Ray got married over the weekend. It was held at a Nashville area farm and about 100 guests attended. Jake Owen performed his song, Made for You, for the couple's first dance. Carrie Underwood posted a video of herself performing an a cappella version of The Champion, while 8-year-old Savannah DeHaan did it in sign language. The video has gone viral. To hear music from Carly Pearce and Carrie Underwood, search Country Roads on TuneIn.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long. This Saturday, the Cotton Bowl in Dallas will be rocking for the 150th edition of the Red River Showdown. On one side, you have 11th ranked Texas, led by their star QB Sam Ehlinger. On the other side, you have undefeated and 6th ranked Oklahoma, looking to avenge last year's loss. Texas quarterback Jalen Hurts will look to continue his Heisman campaign on the national stage. Kickoff starts at 12 p.m. Eastern. Just search college to listen today.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio happenings across the app. Explore exclusive content.
It's called Indie.
Learn about the hottest new podcasts.
The Nostalgia Mixtape, a new podcast hosted by yours truly, Savannah Shroudy.
And get alerted when the big game's about to begin.
This Sunday is Championship Sunday, when we'll find out which two teams are going to play for the Lombardi Trophy.
Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
In the dictionary, a podcast is this: a digital audio file made available on the internet, typically as a series, of which new installments can be received by subscribers automatically. But on TuneIn, a podcast is this.
I'm Adam Grant, and this is Work Life, my podcast with Ted. I study how to make work not suck.
And it's defined like this.
Blackout is a suspense-filled thriller from Endeavor Audio and Q-Code.
From news, sports, to pop culture, comedy, and beyond. Define your own podcast possibilities on TuneIn.
Shares of Johnson & Johnson falling today after a Philadelphia jury ordered the drug maker to pay $8 billion in damages in a case involving its antipsychotic drug. Meg Terrell has the latest for us.
Hey guys, well, J&J shares are off more than 2%, which may not sound like much, but as our Robert Frank just pointed out in the last show, that's billions of dollars in market value. So here's the story. A Philadelphia jury late yesterday said J&J must pay $8 billion in punitive damages in a case involving its antipsychotic drug Risperdal. Now, the damages are to a man who claims that J&J downplayed the risks that the drug could cause breast growth in boys. He already won $680,000 in a compensatory award. J&J called the award, quote, grossly disproportionate and a clear violation of due process, and said it would move to get it set aside. But this is just the latest legal headline to hit J&J amid battles it's fighting in the courtroom on multiple fronts. It just paid $20 million to settle an opioid case after a $572 million loss in Oklahoma. And last year, a jury ordered J&J to pay $4.7 billion in a case around talcum powder. And more broadly, some in the space think the massive size of the award is a symptom of the public's suspicion of the pharma industry in general. A Gallup poll this year found pharma is the least popular industry in the country, unseating the federal government for the first time, guys.
Speaks volumes.
But J&J has had, of all the companies, maybe in the Fortune 500, one of the best reputations for the longest time.
Yeah, and it prides itself on being one that supports nurses, new mothers. It's a family company, although it has actually been attacked for, or at least the Attorney General in Oklahoma has been attacked for using the tagline family company, which is SC Johnson. But Johnson & Johnson has that reputation, of course. It is dealing with all of these different lawsuits on all of these different fronts, and it does seem like investors are pretty worried about this. 2% is not much, but for a $350 billion company, billions of dollars in market value.
Have they increased their reserves a lot?
You know, we ask Joe Wolk, the CFO, that every quarter. We'll have him on again next week around earnings. We'll ask him again, but they appeal all of these verdicts, so they're all still tied up in court. So they don't really have reserves, at least that they tell us about, for all of these cases.
Meg, thank you very much. Meg Terrell. All right, here's a taste of some of the other stories we're watching today. American Airlines now canceling its Boeing MAX 737 flights until January 16th, well after Boeing is expected to clear those planes to fly. Now, American's grounding is the longest of any U.S. airline, saying it plans to resume a maximum of 20 flights a day when it does resume service. Shares of American Airlines are up about 3% today, while Boeing is unchanged. It will be interesting, folks, to see how closely people check the equipment on their flights when these planes come back on, and whether, when you're sitting in the seat, the pilot references the airplane model that you're on.
Especially for Southwest, which is going to have so many of them.
Which has a lot of them. I think the most
the
in the
biggest
business.
fleet of Maxes. Yeah. We should mention AAL, by the way, moving higher also because it moved up its unit revenue forecast to up 1.5% to 2.5%. So that was good news specifically for that airline. Meantime, Disney's earnings in the near future may not be magical. This, according to J.P. Morgan, the bank cutting its fourth quarter and full year estimates, warning about, among other things, stiff streaming services competition and decreased park attendance due to the Hong Kong protests and Hurricane Dorian. Disney slightly higher today, but down 7% in just the past month.
Not a lot of bears on this one, on Disney lately. I mean, ever since they've announced a streaming service, and with it coming up, it seems the estimates for that and the projections are so high that it's, you know, this is a reminder of, oh, hey, here's all the other headwinds they might be facing.
You got to wonder, though, I mean, in terms of this case, this point in time in the valuation, with the stock having run up on the announcement of the pricing plan, with all this competition, there's going to be only so much upside in terms of being able to increase price in a pricing environment where everybody
there is so much competition.
Exactly.
And the Fox integration, apparently, I think they referenced that in their latest earnings report as well. It's not maybe gone as well as they might have expected.
Maybe a reality check for Disney today. Meantime, it's been a low year for top brass. CEO departures hitting a high not seen since 2002. More than 1,000 U.S. executives have stepped down so far this year. Healthcare and tech are the industries with the highest CEO turnover, including notable departures from the likes of Juul's Kevin Burns and WeWork's Adam Newman. Tech departures were up 21% from last year. This is an interesting one. Is it a sign that there's just the labor market in a way is so tight? They're being poached. So in other words, they're leaving, but to go elsewhere. I know in the cases we mentioned, not so much.
Could be a lot of demand for the skills that these folks have.
Late cycle.
All right, Juul's valuation getting slashed as the death toll linked to vaping increases and regulatory risks loom. Plus, a top venture capitalist tells us what it means for the cannabis craze. We will dig into the numbers on vaping next.
Deep left center field. A grand slam!
October baseball is here, and TuneIn Premium is your ticket to the 2019 MLB postseason. Featuring the home and away feeds for every game, TuneIn Premium delivers every call of the ALCS, NLCS, and the 2019 World Series through the voices of the local radio broadcast teams.
Air, left field and deep. He's at the wall.
Now until a new champion is crowned, hear every play of the 2019 MLB postseason live on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Today, we've got another Game 5, Nationals at the Los Angeles Dodgers.
You know, you train for it, you dream about it as a kid, and, you want to have those opportunities to just see how your stuff stacks up.
First pitch is at 8:37 p.m. This series is tied 2-2, Game 5. If you want to catch this Game 5, search Nationals, Dodgers, or even MLB. Favorite your team. Set up reminders so you don't miss any of the playoffs. It's your TuneIn Sports Update.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know TuneIn doesn't just live here on your smart speaker? From the audio that moves you to the audio that gets you moving. Soundtrack your every movement with the free TuneIn app. Available on your phone or tablet. Download TuneIn on the App Store today.
College football is live on TuneIn. Listen for free to games from more than 140 schools all season long. This Saturday, the Cotton Bowl in Dallas will be rocking for the 150th edition of the Red River Showdown. On one side, you have 11th ranked Texas, led by their star QB Sam Ehlinger. On the other side, you have undefeated and 6th ranked Oklahoma, looking to avenge last year's loss. Texas quarterback Jalen Hurts will look to continue his Heisman campaign on the national stage. Kickoff starts at 12 p.m. Eastern. Just search college to listen today.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. Female First is Jay-Z and Beyonce are working on a new song together. A source tells The Sun that they recently shot a music video for their new track. It's one of her most extravagant and expensive shoots. It was mostly filmed in LA and has a highly choreographed routine and also a steamy romantic scene. She's working with some new creatives and is ready to change things up. To hear music from Beyonce, search today's hits on TuneIn.
U.S. venture capitalists expected to pour a record $100 billion into startups for a second straight year. All this week, we are looking at the top venture-backed firms. Juul remains the largest e-cigarette maker, but as negative headlines persist and the death toll linked to vaping keeps rising, its valuation is getting hit. And Frank Holland has the story. Hi, Frank.
Hey, good afternoon, Tyler, Melissa, and Kelly. You know, a lot of headlines about Juul, but its valuation is still $38 billion. Altria has nearly $13 billion investment for a 35% stake. Price shares in the private market at $250, but as the regulatory scrutiny increases following at least 25 deaths linked to vaping, it's not clear if that sky-high valuation can hold up. Hedge fund Arsana is reportedly the latest to write down its investment, valuing Juul closer to $24 billion. Sources tell CNBC the value on the secondary market could be as much as 20% lower now, pricing shares right around $225 or $230. But you have to remember, this is still a tremendous growth story. Juul only launched in July of 2017 as a spin-off of Pax Labs. It now has roughly 72% of the e-cigarette market, selling directly to consumers and through 100,000 retail outlets. A Bloomberg report from earlier this year, citing a person briefed on the numbers, said Juul expects revenues of nearly $3.5 billion in 2019. However, 80% of sales come from flavored vaping products. State bans and health concerns could hit those revenue numbers. This is a well-capitalized company, but unlike its unicorn peers, Juul does not have many investors. It does have some marquee names, including Fidelity. Juul is one of the biggest bets in the Blue Chip Growth Fund. Other investors include Tiger Global and Preoxys Ventures. And you can see they also invest in some other unicorns that are on our list.
All right, Frank, thank you very much. Frank Holland.
As health risks around vaping remain unclear and regulatory headwinds loom, cannabis companies have been feeling the heat as investors worry it could be the next shoe to drop. Joining us now is Matt Hawkins, managing partner at Entourage Effect Capital, a cannabis venture capital firm. Matt, great to have you with us. I'll pick it up where Frank left off. I mean, certainly in the publicly traded stocks, we've seen a depressive effect as these vaping illnesses and the vaping deaths get reported. But amongst your portfolio companies, how many of them are exposed to vaping, and are you concerned that as this drags on, that their valuations could also fall?
Well, we've seen the, obviously a precipitous drop in the values on the public side of the sector, and the vaping crisis is just a small part of that. I mean, the reality is that on the cannabis side, a big portion of the reset on the public side has been due to the lack of regulatory progress at the federal level.
In terms of your concerns about how this could impact some of your investments, Matt, are you worried? I mean, there have been, the argument amongst the bulls in this space, the cannabis bulls, is that, when it comes to THC-related vaping deaths, these are isolated to the illegal markets. But actually in Oregon, there was a case of a middle-aged man who died, and it was connected to THC vaping products bought at a legal store.
Yeah, look, there is definitely a need for tighter regulation in the industry, having a federal overreaching program that could allow us to separate the bad actors from the good actors, because unfortunately there's still bad products being sold at licensed locations in certain states. Having said that, we aren't terribly concerned about the sector, because the truth is sector sales have grown, and meaning sales of THC related products, which means that even though there's probably been a small drop in the vaping products on the THC side, there are so many other delivery mechanisms in the cannabis space that that's obviously been an increase in the use of some of those, which is attributed to the increase in sales.
Have you gone through and gone to your portfolio companies and asked them, amongst the vaping products they have, if they had vitamin E acetate within the cartridges? Because that has been found to be linked to many of these illnesses, specifically
Correct.
for THC vaping.
With absolutely, and the reality is on the vitamin E acetate side of things, that really is what has been really in the illicit market versus the legalized market. All of the companies that we invest in and all the companies that I know have been invested in the cannabis space on the vaping side, use closed loop systems to where the oil can't be tampered with.
And it does not already contain vitamin E acetate as a thickening agent.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Matt, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. Matt Hawkins.
Thank you.
Check Please is next.
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up. Because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. As expected, Carly Pearce and Michael Ray got married over the weekend. It was held at a Nashville area farm and about 100 guests attended. Jake Owen performed his song, Made for You, for the couple's first dance. Carrie Underwood posted a video of herself performing an a cappella version of The Champion, while 8-year-old Savannah DeHaan did it in sign language. The video has gone viral. To hear music from Carly Pearce and Carrie Underwood, search Country Roads on TuneIn.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio happenings across the app. Explore exclusive content.
It's called Indie.
Learn about the hottest new podcasts.
The Nostalgia Mixtape, a new podcast hosted by yours truly, Savannah Shroudy.
And get alerted when the big game's about to begin.
This Sunday is Championship Sunday, when we'll find out which two teams are going to play for the Lombardi Trophy.
Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most. From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. NHL action lives right here on TuneIn. Drew Daltrey and Matthew Chuchek lived up to the hype around their rivalry.
Rink wide to Kopitar, 15 seconds. Downey, waiting, shooting, score!
Daltrey scored a power play goal 50 seconds into overtime to give the Los Angeles Kings a 4-3 victory over the Calgary Flames on Tuesday night. More NHL action, your teams are playing now. And to catch every game, favorite your team. It's your TuneIn Sports Update.
We have 17 seconds in the program, ladies and gentlemen.
We do.
And look at the Dow. It is back climbing towards session highs. Who knows really why? It just is. Maybe it's the rain.
Yep.
Probably.
S&P 500, 2920 up. This is session highs, actually. Thanks for watching Power Lunch.
Closing bell starts right now.
And welcome to the Closing Bell. I'm Courtney Reagan, in today for Sarah Eisen. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange at the Johnson & Johnson Post. You can see it's down 2%, largely sitting out today's broad rally, which has stocks recovering some of the biggest losses from earlier in the week. Now we're just one day away from a major meeting on trade. We're going to cover that and all the market movements coming up in the Closing Bell.
And I'm Wilfred Frost. Good afternoon to you. Let's look at what's driving the action. Signs of optimism on the trade front as China reportedly says it would consider a partial deal. The minutes from the Fed's last meeting showing division about how to frame future policy, with debate over how to align policy decisions with market expectations. And tech leading the charge today, with Apple higher on the back of a bullish call from Canaccord. Markets, as we just mentioned, are higher. S&P's up 1.2%. Dow's up about 230 points. We're near the session highs with an hour left of trade. Joining us for the full hour, Mark Tepper from Strategic Wealth Partners. Mark, Your take today, trade is the main mover, as it kind of was yesterday, in the other direction?
More of the same, right? I mean, day after day after day, the thing that continues to drive the market is all of the most recent news about trade. So yesterday, there was less optimism about there potentially being a deal. Market sells off. Today, there's more optimism, so the market rebounds. But nevertheless, we're really stuck in this trading range of somewhere between like 28.25 and 30.25, right? And I think it's very unlikely that we break out of that range unless and until we actually get a trade deal. And I think the likelihood of us getting a broad deal is unlikely. I just don't think that's going to happen. So it really all depends on what that narrow deal looks like, right? Are the October and December tariffs going to be removed for good, or are they just going to be postponed? If they're removed for good, that's bullish for stocks. If they're just postponed, there's still too much uncertainty. It wouldn't be that great.
Lots to discuss with Mark with 58 minutes left to trade, and all 11 sectors of the S&P 500 healthily higher. Let's focus in on the big stories we're watching. Bob Pisani has a look at today's market movers. Kayla Tausche's covering the latest on China trade. And JP Morgan chief U.S. economist Mike Ferroli is with us to break down today's Fed minutes. But Bob, let's start with you.
Highs for the day, Will, but not a lot of new highs out there. We're not near that. A couple in the retail sector, though. Target, one of the few retailers that have been great this year. Ross Stores, Walmart, TJX, very small groups of stocks up 20 or 30%. That's a new high for Target. A lot of new lows, though. Even though oil is up, still new lows in some of these energy names like Marathon, Occidental. Also in the industrials, FedEx, and in the metals, Freeport-McMoran. They've been on the new low list a lot in the last several weeks. REITs, tale of two stories. If you're in the apartment building business, you're doing great. New highs on Mid-America, Essex, Avalon Bay, Equity. These are all apartment companies, new highs. But if you're in the shopping center business, it's the opposite. We have new lows in Simon Property Group and Macerich, again, two of the biggest shopping mall developers in the U.S. Not all REITs are acting the same way. Guys, back to you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Let's turn now to China trade as high-level officials gear up for talks tomorrow. We've been talking about it all week. Kayla Tausche has the latest in Washington. Hi, Kayla.
Hey, Courtney, it's the calm before a busy 2 days. Today, deputies are expected to brief Ambassador Lighthizer on what transpired behind closed doors on Monday and Tuesday. Lighthizer, in turn, is expected to brief President Trump on any progress made. That will determine the U.S.'s approach to these high-level meetings tomorrow and Friday that were once thought to yield another truce, but are now preceded by escalation on a number of fronts by both sides. The variable, though, this round is the same, and that is how President Trump chooses to respond. Will from Courtney.
Kayla, do we feel that all members of the president's negotiating team are starting to focus towards a partial deal? Does Ambassador Lighthizer like the sound of a partial deal?
Well, I don't think at any point in this process have all advisors been on the same page with regard to what the best course of action is. And to that point, you even this week had advisors coming out with very different messages. On one hand, you had Larry Kudlow saying if China changes the foreign ownership caps for multinational companies operating there, then we might be able to put to rest some of these intellectual property issues. But then you had Peter Navarro saying, no, we need a big deal or no deal. So clearly they are trying to ramp up the pressure on China, even as they're trying to signal what it would take to get this agreement.
Kayla, thank you very much for that. Now, the Fed is putting out its September minutes, just did do so last hour, highlighting a growing divide about how to frame Fed policy to align with market expectations. We've spoken with 3 Fed officials here on CNBC since the last rate cut and asked all of them what they plan to do at the next meeting.
I don't have to say today. And in fact, I won't say today because I really think it's important that we really look at the incoming economic information that we're going to get as we work up to the end of the month meeting. And so I think this is a particularly important environment where you are very attuned to what's the incoming economic and financial information telling you.
I still have an open mind. We still have more data between now and when the meeting actually occurs. I don't think I should prejudge it at this point. We've already had 2 easings. The easings don't have their impact immediately.
I'd go another 25 before the end of the year, but I would like to reserve judgment. I don't like to prejudge meetings. We'll see how the data come in. If you guys are right and I should be more optimistic, I'll certainly take that on board.
For more, let's bring in Mike Ferroli, chief U.S. economist at JP Morgan. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start with the minutes. What were your key takeaways, and did it alter your expectation for the path of future policy? Well, I guess the key takeaway was, as you said, there was a lot of division as to the appropriate course of policy, at least at the time of the meeting in September. However, that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. You may recall after the September meeting, we got the dots, which showed all the forecasts, and those showed a lot of division in terms of where they see policy going this year. So in that sense, the minutes weren't all that, they added a little color, but I don't think they really changed the narrative all that much. And I think we also have to remember, that the FOMC, some people matter more than others, right? And yesterday we heard from Chair Powell, who obviously matters the most, and he was still talking about downside risks from trade policy uncertainty, from global growth, and that they would act as appropriate to head off those risks. So that to me sounded like he was content with the market pricing in a cut at the end of the month, which it is. And so it didn't sound like he was really pushing back against that. So I think, again, among all the votes that count, his counts more, and I think that's probably where the committee's going. But in terms of the minutes, I don't think they really changed the story all that much relative to what we knew at 1:59.
Mark, yesterday we heard from Powell, and he talked about the idea of buying some Treasury bills, but said it's not QE. Well, if it's not QE, what is it, and how should the market be reading that?
It sounds like QE to me, right? I mean, it's QE4, so it's the same thing they've already done. I think, it's just going to be on a much more limited scale. But nonetheless, I mean, it looks like the Fed is definitely communicating a dovish tone, right? We're expecting a 25 basis point cut at the end of the month. About an 80% probability right now is being priced in. And then there's now a 50%-ish probability of a second cut before the end of the year. I think that's likely as well. So, I think the Fed has just committed, and they continue to communicate the fact that they are ready to step in and make sure that the economy continues in this expansion mode, especially given the fact that a lot of this economic data has been deteriorating. These ISM numbers were not good, right?
Mike, do you think it was as much as QE or something less significant?
No, I definitely don't think it was QE. QE is buying longer-term bonds to push down longer-term interest rates. If they're buying Treasury bills, that won't affect longer-term interest rates. And in fact, on the announcement yesterday, you didn't see any reaction like that. So I think this is business as usual, i.e. business before 2007, when the balance sheet normally expanded to meet the public's demand for liquidity, whether it's reserves or currency. So I definitely don't think this is QE.
What about the fact that we did hear specific mention yesterday by Powell about the yield curve? I think more so than we've heard before about it possibly being now an objective to re-steepen it.
So, look, I mean, they've debated whether the flattening of the yield curve is a signal of impending recession, and you saw that actually again today in the minutes. Obviously, there are some factors that are conflating the signal there a little bit. Big part of that is global interest rates and negative interest rates around the world, which is leading to a flight to capital into the U.S. So I think that the debate is still open. I guess, we kind of split the difference. We do think the yield curve is signaling slower growth, but we don't think it necessarily is signaling recession right now.
Michael, Powell keeps saying the Fed will act as appropriate. Is that enough? Does he need to be a little bit more transparent to give us some future guidance?
Well, I mean, the decision hasn't been made, and it's a committee decision. There's more data to come over the next 3 weeks. But I think right now the wording and the body language is consistent with the wording you've seen ever since the midsummer, when they really pivoted in a way that signaled further easing. So I think, I don't think this is a game of code words, but right now the language sounds like it's incumbent on the data to really surprise, to the upside quite a bit for them not to ease at the end of the month, in my opinion.
I'm impressed you read his body language as